In today's video, we're going to go over 5 mistakes to avoid while using a pellet smoker. Let's dive into mistake number 1. Opening your lid too much. There's a saying that goes, if you lookin', you ain't cooking. What that means is all that smoke and heat that is trapped inside your smoker is lost when you open the door. So try to open your smoker door as little as possible. Just know that every time you open the smoker lid, either to spritz something down or to wrap something, you add an additional 30 minutes to the cook time. Now, a pro tip, if you plan on opening the smoker lid, you can actually prime the burn pot before you open the lid. The reason why you'd want to do that is that dumps a lot of fresh pellets into the burn pot. That will increase the internal temperature. So when you open the smoker, spritz something down and wrap it and close it, it will actually come up to temperature faster than if you didn't do that. Now, before we dive into mistake number 2, you are going to want to stay to the end of this video because I'm going to share my number 1 tip for you how to get better barbecue. Mistake number 2, neglecting to clean your smoker. Now look, I get it. Some barbecues take 10 to 15 hours to do. And at the end of that, you don't have any energy to actually clean your grill. But at least make a point to clean your smoker at least once a month. And do it on a day you're not cooking so you're not tired after the cook. There was one time I let my smoker go for a few months without cleaning. When I went to use the sear function, there was a grease fire that I had to deal with. So it's just so much easier to just go top to bottom, choose one day out of the month to clean it up. I will link a video in the description that you can actually check out how I clean my smokers. Now, a pro tip to make the cleanup process a lot easier is I like using foil trays underneath my barbecue, and that does 2 things. One, if you put a little water in there, that helps stabilize the internal temperatures, but it also acts as like a grease catch. So all that grease and junk doesn't get on my bottom deflector. If you aren't using the searing function, you can actually wrap the bottom heat deflector in foil, and so then cleanup is a lot easier than if you just put nothing in the smoker. Now, mistake number 3 is cooking by time and not by temperature. You wouldn't believe how many questions I get, and it's usually, how long does it take to smoke brisket, ribs, pulled pork in my smoker? And the truth is there are so many variables. I've had brisket done in 10 hours. I've had brisket done in 20 hours. So it's really hard to even give a ballpark time. The best thing to do is go off of internal temperature of the meat rather than how long it takes. A pro tip would be to pick up a barbecue thermometer, and that will tell you everything you need to know. You will get way more consistent results. Now for me, I like using InkBird thermometers, not paid to say that. I just feel that they are a very good price and they get the job done. Sure, there are more expensive options out there, but for me, for the last like 4 years, I've been a huge fan of InkBird products. I will link a few in the description for the ones that I personally use, but whatever temperature thermometer you get, you'll be good to go. And it takes out all the guesswork of like, is it done, is it not done? And you'll be able to pull your meat off the smoker at the exact temperature that you want it to. No more guessing. It's a good tip right there.
But how long does it take?
Mistake number 4 is not letting your meat rest. Now this one is probably the hardest one to do because after a 14-hour brisket, you're telling me I have to wait even longer to enjoy it? Yes, and here's why. When you let your brisket rest, as the temperature cools down, it actually starts pulling all the juices back to the center of the meat. The longer you can let your meat rest, the juicier it will become. That's why when you see those videos of people slicing the briskets and just all that juice is just pouring out, that is a well-rested brisket. Now, a pro tip, if you're doing a brisket and you want to serve it for dinner, have the end time be around lunchtime. That way, when you pull it, it will be resting long enough to when you slice in at dinner time, it is perfectly well rested. I will leave a link in the video description on 4 ways on how you can actually rest your brisket. And a lot of that has materials that you already have in your home, so you don't need to actually go out and buy anything. But check that video out if you actually want to up your game when it comes to resting your meat. Mistake number 5 is running out of fuel. This bad boy right here is a hopper. This is where all your wood pellets go, and this is your fuel source for your smoker. Now, this happens to the best of us. Usually it's late night, we put a brisket on, we look at our hopper and say, yeah, that's probably enough. We go to bed, wake up first thing in the morning only to find the hopper is actually completely empty. And you don't solve this problem just by putting more pellets on. You pretty much have to prime the auger tube, which takes about 3 to 4 minutes, and then you pretty much have to start the smoker up again. So that will literally set you back between an hour to an hour and a half if you actually run out of pellets. So the pro tip on this one is fill your hopper up before you go to bed, and then check it first thing in the morning, and then refill it back again. Generally, you will burn about 1 pound of pellets per hour, but I've seen it range from all the way up to 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds per hour. So since there's so many variables with that, just top it off and you will be good to go. All right, because you stayed to the end of this video, I'm gonna share my #1 tip on how you can get better barbecue. And the tip is, make minor changes to get major great barbecue. So let me explain what I mean by that. When starting off, you could take a barbecue recipe, you could do your barbecue, you could taste it and you're like, it was good, it wasn't bad. But then what you do is you go and find a completely new recipe, try that out, and you are in this loop of, it wasn't bad, maybe it was a little bit better, and then you try a completely different recipe. The advice that I have is make minor changes to the current recipe that you're currently going with. So I have a brisket recipe that I like doing. I know I can get a really, really good brisket doing it with that recipe. Now, I'll never do the exact same thing twice, I'll always just change one little thing. Maybe it's a little extra salt. Maybe it's resting the brisket a little bit longer. Maybe it's dialing back on a certain ingredient. Maybe it's adding more tallow in the resting process. You don't want to make a lot of changes because that makes it hard to narrow down how you actually can improve. So what I'll do is you start out with your recipe, you'll make a minor change, and then during the taste test, you'll decide, did it actually help improve my brisket? If it did, that becomes the new standard of your recipe, and then make another change. Then your barbecue will get better and better. Now, if at any point your barbecue goes in the wrong direction, just fall back on your last best recipe and then go from there. Eventually, by doing these minor changes, you'll get to a recipe where you don't need to change anything, and then you lock it in for good. It will be the perfect flavor, it will be juicy as all can be, and then you move on to the next meat and basically become a master at that. And then by doing this over and over again, you'll get to a point where you don't need to make any minor changes because now you have major great barbecue. It will be the perfect texture, perfect flavor. It will be juicy as ever. And then you know, hey, you got some good barbecue. If you have someone in your life that is just learning on a pellet smoker, you might want to share this video with them. Do consider subscribing if you want to learn all things Texas style barbecue. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Grill Sergeant out.